Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here virtually. And I was asked to give an overview of the labor market where we are now and where we're coming from. And so the very first thing I wanted to show you was just the monthly change in total private employment since January 2008. And when you look at that graph, which I'm hoping you have either in front of you or on a slide in front of you, you see that, of course, we started losing jobs in January 2008, and we continued to lose jobs through December 2009 before turning around. So when President Obama took office, we had lost nearly 3 million jobs, and we were losing about 800,000 jobs a month at the point he was inaugurated. So flipping to the next slide, what's happened in the meantime this year, we've now we see that job growth turn around, and we're starting to add jobs. So a year ago, in October 2009, we had another month of job losses, and from that point, we started to see, and that's also the point at which the unemployment rate peaked at 10.1%. Since then, we've been adding jobs, and we've added 874,000 jobs this month, 1.1 million of which are private sector jobs. So obviously, when I tell you 1.1 million of the 874,000, that should tell you right away that the government sector is not helping this situation right now. In fact, it's hurting. So we've added more private sector jobs than we've added total jobs because we're losing jobs in government. The Department of Labor is getting ready to release an independent study that will come out next week that I wanted to take a second just to highlight, because what this study did was looked at the role of unemployment insurance as an automatic stabilizer. So as all of you know, in the United States, some people get unemployment insurance when they lose their job. And when they get unemployment insurance, research has shown that they spend more money than if they didn't have unemployment insurance. And you probably didn't need research to tell you that the unemployed actually use that unemployment insurance to eat, that they don't save it for a rainy day, because in fact, this is their rainy day. And what that means is that by putting that money back in the economy, it helps prevent further job losses. And that independent study found that we would have lost about 1.5 million jobs more in each quarter of the recession if we had not had unemployment insurance available to the extent that we made it available. And in particular, in the last quarter of the recession, in Q2 2009, we would have actually lost another 1.8 million jobs. One thing, the next slide shows the unemployment rate over the last year, and you can see that the unemployment rate, as I mentioned previously, peaked at 10.1%. I also like to just help benchmark it for people. About a point in 10.1% is an easy number to remember, because that tells you about 1 in 10 people in the labor market are looking for a job and don't have one. Another way, though, just to keep the magnitudes in mind, is about a point on the unemployment rates equal to about 1.5 million people. So going back to that independent report, which found that each quarter we would have had about 1.5 or even more people unemployed without unemployment insurance, that tells us that the unemployment rate would have been about a point higher without unemployment insurance. So over the past year, we've brought the unemployment rate down 0.5 point. I like to point out this very, very small victory, because it is very small, but I do think it's worth remembering that the unemployment rate was 0.5 point higher a year ago, and it's now at 9.6%. And you can see the other thing besides the bars on that graph is a line, and that line shows the number of non-farm payrolls. So of course the unemployment rate is when we go around and we ask individuals about what they're doing. Are they working? Are they looking for work? And those individual surveys give us the unemployment rate. The other thing we do is talk to firms. gathering data from establishments about how many people they have employed, and that establishment level data gives us our non-farm payrolls number. That's what's graphed with a line, and you can see that there's this slight difference between the household survey and establishment, in that the unemployment rate peaked in October, but the trough in the number of jobs available actually occurred in December. But both of them point to a recovery over all of 2010. So what are some of the steps that the administration took to help bring down that unemployment rate? Well, the first thing that all of you know about, and I'm sure have heard an enormous amount about it, is the Recovery Act. And the Recovery Act provided a number of steps to try to help with job creation. There were a number of tax cuts, both for families and for businesses, and then spending in healthcare, education, infrastructure. There was also an extension of unemployment insurance. I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is in this particular recession, we had an earlier increase in federal unemployment insurance than in previous recessions. So in every recession since 1958, the federal government has stepped in and added weeks of unemployment insurance to supplement the state-based plan. So the state-based unemployment insurance plan gives people up to 6 months, 26 weeks, of unemployment insurance. So for the first 6 months, if you lose a job, the state-based program will provide you some amount of money to help you transition to a job. And in normal times, 26 weeks is plenty of time because most people do find a job. The vast majority of people who become unemployed in a normal economy find a job within 26 weeks. But during recessions, many people don't find a job within 26 weeks, and the longer duration of unemployment means that there's an argument for extending that unemployment insurance for longer weeks. And in this particular recession, we did that earlier than in any other recession, and that was actually begun in June of 2008. So one of the things that the Bush administration did was immediately to extend unemployment insurance to have this federal program, which we call the Emergency Unemployment Compensation System. That's been expanded several times, and I want to come back and talk about that because this federal program's coming to an end this month without further congressional action. And then another thing that was done is something called the HIRE Act, which was a set of hiring incentives to help encourage people to employ unemployed people. Now, it's worth realizing that millions of people every month get hired for a job, even in a terrible, terrible recession. The difficulty in a recession is that more people lose their job than are hired. And a lot of that hiring happens by hiring people who already have a job. And because we became increasingly concerned about the long-term unemployed, people who haven't had a job for months at a time, the HIRE Act was designed to give firms an encouragement to hire people who haven't been working for a while. And so it gave a tax credit to you if you hired somebody who hadn't worked for 2 months, for 60 days. There was, this past summer, the Education, Jobs, and Medical Assistance Act, and what that did was tried to help states out, and I'm going to come back and show you a little bit about what's been going on at the state level, but states have been losing or doing an enormous amount of layoffs and shrinking state and local government employees. And so the Education, Jobs, and Medical Assistance Act was designed to help support the jobs of teachers, police officers, other important government employees. And so that provided $26 billion in grants to states to help with those. And then finally, there was the Small Business Job Act, which was a series of small business proposals that the president put forth earlier this year to help small businesses continue to grow. So those are some of the steps that we've taken. And I wanted to now let us dig a little bit deeper to see what industries were hurt during the recession and which ones have been coming out of the recession recovering. So the next slide, which shows industries during the recession, shows that our losses were steepest in construction, manufacturing, retail trade, and professional and business services. I don't think that's probably a surprise to anyone that those were the areas we saw hurt the most, or a large number of job losses. It's also, though, interesting to note that we lost jobs in every industry except for education and health services. So this is not to say that education and health services weren't hurt by the recession, but given our population dynamics, that's a growing area, and it grew throughout the recession, and every month of the recession there was positive job growth. So what's happened in the recovery? Well, the next slide shows that the industries that have been benefiting in the recovery, some of them are where we lost a lot of jobs, we've been adding some jobs. So, manufacturing, we've been seeing job growth, retail, trade. But there's some other things to highlight that are not just the industries where we saw losses. Mining and logging lost very few jobs, but have actually had a lot of job growth since the recovery began. Leisure and hospitality has had a lot of jobs added relative to the jobs that they lost. And of course, we continue to see education and health services growing. Now, the big outlier here is, again, I should point out, I'm sure no one's surprised to see that every industry has recovered with the exception of construction, financial services, and information, and that might be a little bit surprising, but financial services and construction are the areas where we just haven't seen, we haven't actually seen positive payroll changes yet in the last 10 months. The other area, of course, where we see big job losses is government. And I alluded to that earlier. This is not just census jobs. This is state and local governments have been shrinking due to the serious fiscal problems they have because of the recession and a decline in the tax revenues that they're able to bring in. So the next slide shows that decrease in state and local government jobs. And you can see that in the early part of the recession, we were adding jobs in state and local government. And I should have noted earlier when I was showing you industry changes during the recession, the total change in jobs in government during the recession was positive by about 100,000, but not enough to make up for the 241,000 loss that we've seen in the last 10 months. And that loss is not just about census jobs. This is actually about a decline in state and local government jobs as well. And that's what the figure in front of you right now shows. And it was the impetus behind the president pushing for the $26 billion in additional aid to the states to help them retain teachers and medical personnel. Since December 2009, there have been 269,000 state and local government jobs lost, and 135,000 of those have been school teachers, teachers' aides, and other educational workers. So the bill the president signed was estimated to try to help save 160,000 teachers' jobs. So while we're spending some time on talking about specific industries, I wanted to highlight the Department of Labor's investments in clean energy. I know you spent a lot of time thinking about green jobs yesterday, and of course this is something that is very important here at the Department of Labor. We've been working with the president to increase our national investments in clean energy. We've awarded $500 million in green jobs grants to help provide training for workers that will prepare them to enter energy efficiency and renewable energy industries, and to fund comprehensive statewide energy sector strategies. So these grants are built on strategic partnerships requiring labor and businesses to work together. And this has led to growth in jobs like solar panel installers, hybrid and electric auto technicians, weatherization, etc. So the next slide actually shows you employment in selected industries and how it's grown, but I think we've actually really covered that. So let me turn quick to talking about unemployment disparities.